All right, welcome everybody. It's been a while since we got together for the special council meeting here for the 2025 budget of the town of St. Andrews. We are live from the WC O'Neill Arena complex, but this is also going to be aired through Zoom and Facebook. If anyone has any questions this evening or watching it after the fact in regards to the budget, please email pnopper@townofstandrews.ca. I see that we are missing a couple councillors tonight, Councillor Bennett, Councillor Hurdle, and Councillor Blanchard, but we do have quorum. And I do want to recognize before we get going that we are on the unceded traditional territory of the Peskotomuhkati people. I'll be looking for a mover for this agenda. It's not a very heavy one, but it is relating to the budget. I've got Councillor Heenan, seconded by Councillor Neal. Any changes to the budget or to the agenda? There will be changes to the budget.
Get it approved tonight.
Carried. All in favor of approving the agenda, please signify by saying aye. That is everybody. That has been carried. Is there any conflict of interest tonight? Anyone paying taxes in the room? No conflict of interest. There is no presentations per se, although there kind of is one. But that will be under the introduction, consideration, and passing of bylaws and motions, which is our reason for being here. It is draft one of the 2025 Town of St. Andrews budget, FA 240934. Mr. Spear, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Council, I'm pretty much going to be going on slides that I have given to you, and they'll be on the screen for anyone looking. I will also advise that our operations manager, Terry Acton, is also on the line. So if there's questions or stuff come up, you'll hear the voice of God coming from the speakers. So don't be scared. Okay, so most of this has been reiterated through the report that I gave you. So I'll just jump into some of the highlights, and then I'll get into the department by department that matches with this statements before you. So in general, in this very early stages, I just raised the warrant and most expense items by 3%. It's roughly where inflation is right now. The assessment bases are unknown at this time. And Paul and I were looking really quickly the other day, and we estimate that new builds are probably going to be around 2% of the total assessment, 2% of the 3%. So in a perfect world, if you had enough new builds to match inflation and your new costs, then current property owners would pay no more taxes. But that's early in the process, just to warn.
A fairly substantial group that are just continually getting our 10% a year increase in assessment. So,
but in theory, we'll see how it shakes out at the end of the day. But if we decrease mill rates to match new builds and assessments, that the total property tax bill could come the same. It's really early to judge that, but at least in math, on paper, it works out. And so we're trying to be sympathetic. We appreciate that there's been a lot of changes, but we'll have to wait and see what it looks like once that goes. I'll break the news to you now. Because of the provincial election, they're probably not going to release a bunch of this information until after that. I was talking to someone today about that. So we could be a little bit longer getting this process done. That said, it doesn't mean we shouldn't go through it and narrow it down as best we can. And then once we find where we kind of are, then we can work ahead.
So sorry, just to slow that down a little bit. Will we have a snapshot of what percent our overall tax base was? We're not going to get even a glimpse of that.
From my understanding, they're not releasing any information until after the election.
It's because it could be political. Is that the assumption?
Well, yeah.
I'm pretty sure the tax bill,
assessments people are been complaining about assessments, rightfully so. They've been escalating. It's just during election, I'm assuming no one, like, it's not really the politicians putting the squeeze on all of the departments. The civil services are too afraid to cause a conundrum during mid-election, to be honest, and I don't blame them.
It's surprising because when the tax bills went out, they said that it's something that your municipal government controls in the tax bill, if you recall. So it's ironic that they wouldn't send it out during an election. You'd think they had something to do with it as well. But anyway, so that's my shot.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but that's what I'm kind of hearing.
Okay, just before you continue, Your Worship, Councillor Blanchard has come online.
Perfect, thank you.
Just to remember, as we're going through the general budget and the kind of the things I'm talking about here, that the capital budget is also a big ticket item. We won't go through that tonight because it's such a big item that we'll just go through the operations. We are awaiting the final Regional Service Commission budget, and in an email received from the executive director, no, CEO, he had presented it, and he's presenting it to the CAOs on Friday. But he says it's probably subject to big changes, that there's still to be a lot of discussion at the board level. So we'll have to wait and see how that goes. And right now, just as a figure, I put staff increases, that's being a CPI increase at 2.5%, just to put it in there. That's following our normal practices of matching CPI. Now, something I wanted to bring up, just to put it out there, and we won't have this discussion again until the assessment bases come out, but within the framework of property taxes, we're allowed to create our own non-residential tax ratio. So it can be anywhere between 1.4 and 1.7%. And what that means is if I have a $100,000 house, but it's non-resident, whether it's a business, rental, or my secondary home, they assess the property higher. And so it's municipalities can assume anywhere between 1.4 to 1.7 of the rate. And I was looking quickly, and we'll do an analysis by next budget, but over half the municipalities in New Brunswick have done that, but it will create a significant effect for those that fall underneath that category. I just wanted to bring it to your attention because it's a tool available to you, so making you aware of it. We've used 1.5 since the first budget imposed by the province, but just to give you what it could mean, if we had chosen the 1.7, the highest, it would have created an additional $136,000 in assessment. So as a general review, revenues has increased by 5%, but the warrant still makes up 83% of our income. And during the fiscal reform, that's one of the highest across Canada, and they're trying to figure that out. And now there's something that I won't say saving us, but is a one-time entry that will complicate things in the future, is that we've had a surplus in 2023 of $204,000. It's an audit you just passed a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. By regulation, we have to include that in an income this year. And so there's $204,000 in extra income. That's a one-time surplus. If I had known at the time there was some issues with capital, we were guessing on them, we would have transferred it into reserve funds anyway, but nonetheless, it does have an effect on operations. Expenses increased by 5%. Most are at 3%, but there's some things to go through. And our new assessment base out of the whole town of St. Andrews should be close to $700 million, which is quite surprising for a community of only 3,000 people. Now, the goals of tonight is just to go through the operations. There are some bigger ticket items like I would like to discuss to gauge your support. If I get a big no on some of them, that's fine. We'll just take it off future budget so we can move ahead. If it's we'd like to look at it later, that's fine too. So we'll just leave it there. Ask questions anytime. I'll go through kind of department by department as you're used to seeing on the monthly reports. Again, treat this as an early rough draft. As I was going through this presentation, I noticed there are a handful of errors throughout. I was trying to get on vacation and was going through and everything balanced, but then I realized there's some things duplicated. And there is still a lot of uncertainty around assessments on conditional grants and I mentioned earlier the RSC budget. And that I mentioned about that because of the election, it looks like key information probably won't be released for another month or so. So administrative services, town hall and council, there's an overall increase of 4%. One thing that's there is the visioning exercise for Market Square. And I got a quote on that actually, then give it to you now, I guess, so you can just have a quick look at it. $60,000. We talked in that during, you can just pass it and take one and pass it along. That you'd like to look at something like that. I'm not saying you have to, I'm just saying that that we brought it forward for your discussion. Animal control, it's a 5% increase, but we do need to consolidate the contract. So I'll have to try to get that done before the budget process is completed. Although that said, the provincial budget doesn't run out till the end of the first quarter. Computer maintenance, we increased by $5,000. We're just seeing more cost for that for a whole bunch of reasons. There's more stuff internally that's done, but there's more units being bought. And frankly, our staff has increased, and the number of counselors that we're just finding there's more stuff that we need to bring an external IT consultant in to help us out with emergencies. Government flags and pins, it's a relatively small item, but we did increase it by $700. Most of those provincial flags that you see hanging along during the summertime are in pretty rough repair. And so we'd like to replace most of those this year and get some new ones. And in the past, there's been some community members who have donated to that without even asking them for the money. So we were grateful for that, but that was probably 4 or 5 years ago. So it's time to replace many of them. Now, town hall repairs, the big one with that is the electrical panel out back should be replaced for 2 reasons. One is we did buy a generator a few months ago and it works, but we really need to create the proper connection to it. So it's just a plug and play. Right now, we did have an outage in the summer, I think, and they weren't working then, but it was, I think, before that. And our electrician had to come in and do some magic to make it work. But in the event of a storm, it'd be nice to just to pull it out. It's a good piece of insurance because our whole system at town hall shuts down between phones, computers and stuff. We might as well send everybody home. So it's good to get that going. We could keep up and running, especially if there's an emergency event, then we're able to keep things moving ahead. We're also looking at putting some more outside lights around and increasing the number of lights, basically, related to the crime and stuff that's been happening.
Chris, just hold.
Sorry, yeah.
Objection to more lights.
So noted. Janitorial. There's significant cost related to public washrooms. Just the ones at town office. This isn't including the park or the new ones up at the point. It's about $7,000 a year that's going into the general administration budget, and staff are talking and we're wondering, because most of those washrooms are just for the tourism purposes, if we should be taking some of that money out of the operating or the tourism levy and applying it against those. So that will take more pressure off the, just a minute, Kurt will get to you, take more pressure off of the tax rate. If you include all bathrooms, especially this one up here, you're probably talking $10,000 to $12,000. Yes, Councillor Michelle.
Question, how do we do it now? Is it like staff does it, or do we contract out, or?
So the washrooms are cleaned by a service. They actually do all of them. And that's a significant bill, and we'll talk about that later.
Including the youth center and the...
Yeah, all the properties, basically almost all the properties, yes. Wharf, youth center, council chambers occasionally. They open and close the park. They open and close the washroom on the weekends, the arena during the summer, during the non-arena hours, library, youth center. So
I guess it's a compliment to them that I don't know who does it, because if it wasn't done well, I'd have asked questions a long time ago. But is that something maybe that we could consider doing in house, or is that how do we do that?
Probably should be an enclosed session.
Okay,
and we'll have a discussion about it later. And the professional development was bumped up by $2,500. Celebration of my 20th year. No, but next year there's the national conference for administrators is being held in Montreal, and I would like to be considered to go to that. It's in May, so just for your consideration. And just so you know, though, there are, I was talking to the national representative, I think that she said there's 22 other CAOs within the province that go to her, other CAOs and staff. So it's well represented within the province. Is there any questions on general administration?
I think what's probably gonna happen as we go through that is when we see it all roll up together, that's when we usually start saying this works, this doesn't work, and that's when we go through the cleaning. Right now, I guess it's for information purposes. That's safe to say, council, as we see what this all rolls up to.
It is, but I guess, again, your worship, if there's things that you think no way in heck, or someone has a strong feeling about it, then let us know. But if it's, well, if we can afford it without increasing taxes, sure, then that's a fair argument.
Councillor Gumashell would like to see candlelight, right? Councillor Gumashell? I'm just teasing you.
Don't get me going. I do think we need to rationalize the lighting downtown. No more Costco tacky lights, but don't get me going.
No, but like visioning exercise is something I heard on the table. Animal control we have to do, especially for Shamcook Bayside wards. Computer maintenance, that's kind of is what it is. I know that the amount that we've been paying the last few years has gone up dramatically in my day job, so I'm not surprised to see that. The flags, they've been a few years. It's not a surprise. They were starting to look a little weathered. Replace the electrical panel sounds like something that isn't optional, I'm assuming.
Best practices would be replace it. If you ever are in the town hall, look out by the back door on the right and you'll think, yikes, it's all legal and stuff, but there's just wires go. There's 3 panels there now as the office has grown over the years.
Sounds good. Janitorial, let's take that to closed session just to talk a little more specific on the details of the contract. And then professional development, when we roll up the whole number, let's get into that a little more, if that makes sense, council. So thank you, Mr. Spear.
Okay. So there are, to try to help offset, there's a couple of items that we decreased. Advertising, just we don't seem to be doing as much, I think primarily because we can advertise things on the website now. We do have another section for mail outs. So that's catching stuff. So it's not eliminating those. It's just we used to use a courier a lot more till it didn't exist. That said, as you'll find out with the BIA or the BIA file, you still have to advertise that in paper. So anything that requires that will be going to the Telegraph. On the audit, we dropped it by $5,000. So by law or by standard, every 3 years we have to do an actuarial study of the employee retirement benefit and the employee sick benefit, and it's $5,000. So we did it this past year, and so we'll be good for the next 2 years without doing it. HR consultants, we haven't used a lot this year. Typically we use it for recruitment, and we don't see any need for it, at least this point. They tend to be, other jurisdictions tend to use them more because of union contracts, which are a whole different beast and require some more professional help. And then we did have $30,000 in the current year's budget, 2024, that we were able to drop. So as said, there's an overall increase of 4%. If you dropped, depending what you do, with the visioning exercise, that would almost mean a flat year for that department. Economic development. Now, in the past, we set aside monies from the tourism accommodation levy to help offset that cost. This is my personal opinion, but we've got some capital things that we're going to be looking at that could be picked up. So for now, I've removed that unless council says otherwise. So that development fund, which runs about $115,000 a year, we were using about a third, I think $30,000, if I remember. Yeah, $34,000 last year that we set aside for economic development. And so I've taken that out for now because of other things. If you worship, I'll just give Councillor Bennett a minute to get to a seat. Councillor Bennett, we're on page 8 of the little slideshow there once you get situated. Or slide 8. Yep, let's get a copy. So expenses, assistance grants, I currently held them at $15,000. I inadvertently carried over some things that were in last year's that you approved after the fact. So Sunbury Shores, Katie's Cove, and Charlotte County Archives are included in this year's. I'm not supporting them or not supporting them. I didn't mean to put those in, to be honest. Usually we sort that out at a later date, They are in there though, but it's whatever council wants to do with them. Yeah. But we did find that we added up, I think it was $84,000 worth of special requests that came in out of 8 applicants. They're all coming on October the 1st to present that night. So you'll be able to see each of them. And actually later this week, Paul will send out the council package with all the requests at the application so you can review them and consider them.
So just to be clear, we have 24,000 currently earmarked for over $80,000 worth of requests, right? We're gonna have some tough conversations, council.
And I've gone to assume shared model and economic development. For that model, it was passed in St. Stephen, but they want to have some more discussions on them with smaller committees that include councillors. Eastern Charlotte's still discussing it, so we'll probably, I'll put out a meeting invite in the next couple of days to the mayor and Councillor Weir, myself, to meet up with equivalent councillors and the others to discuss next steps. And the travel portion of that economic development should be removed. That's a mistake. That was included in our previous, but the $70,000 share for the new agency includes all costs. For fiscal services, we already talked about that there's that one-time special charge of $204,000 that's being included. Just so you know, that has about a 3-cent impact on the rate, just so you understand that it's fairly significant. So when it disappears in 2026, it'll put a little more pressure there. There are debt increases happening next year. That's actually just for the ladder truck that's coming in. Council had approved borrowing, I think 3 or 4, early in the mandate of the original 6 councillors. Anyway, it's $910,000. We won't be able to draw it out until May, but then we'll start making payments on it over 15 years, I believe it is. For the Wellness Center, we just maintained 3% inflationary increases there.
Just a quick question on the ladder truck. How does that work with other, like with say Boquebec, and then how does it work for Shamcook Bayside? Because the order was placed before reform. So is that just status quo because they're already paying a percentage of that? Like how does, because if we got a new truck, they always paid a percentage anyway. Is that just kind of grandfathered in and it's kind of flushes out? How does that work?
There's no hard and steadfast rule, to be honest.
Okay.
That, you know, it's whatever. Right now, all the prior debt of St. Andrews is still shared as a local cost within the old, you know, the tax rate of the old town. So I guess in my mind, I was originally thinking of applying it across, but what would have happened prior to amalgamation is it's complicated, but the local government would have looked at the cost of a lower quality truck. I think they topped out at $300,000 or $400,000 is all they said it was worth. Figured about how much the debenture was going to be on that, and then use that as the share. And it's always based on the assessment share. So hypothetically, Bayside and Shamcook represent in round numbers about 1/3 of the assessment base of St. Andrews. So he would have said, okay, so the value of the truck I'm going to say is $300,000. So I'm going to assume $100,000 and the debt on $100,000. I guess I'm open to this discussion at that point.
I didn't know. So I'll go ahead 1 second, Councillor, just to follow up. So I wasn't aware. So they, even the ladder truck, they just find the lowest equivalent value of a truck, and that's what they
they kind of say
for years.
Yeah, they say whatever is the best truck that they would have put in a like a LSD fire hall, like rolling dam.
Okay.
That's don't want to say the term good enough, but they would have, that was the highest they were willing to pay for.
Okay, that's good. Councillor
Ware. Rumor I heard was that when the ladder truck does come in, one of the tankers will be disposed of.
Yeah, more than a rumor. That's correct.
So there's 2 tankers serving 2 wards now. So we'll be down to 1 tanker serving the wards. Ladder trucks very little use to us.
There could be quite a significant use in Bayside Shamcook.
Pardon me?
There could be a significant use for that ladder truck in Shamcook and Bayside.
For
We'll
instance,
be using it on more than like just large buildings.
It knocks it down at a lot faster rate, does it not, than a
It's a
regular?
lot safer than laddering roofs, and
I assume that will be dispatched on almost every call.
it will most likely be the first out truck for the fire department. Yeah.
No, I was just trying to get straight in my mind where it could be used because of putting out the outriggers and all that type of stuff. It's, you know, not my specialty, but I have worked around those types of things. And I'm just wondering, are we going to have as same coverage we've even got now?
Yeah.
We don't have a tanker. We only have one tanker. We do have 2 new fire hydrants in Bayside though.
Yeah.
Shamcook number 3, but no buildings around them, but we got hydrants. But and that's the other thing is assume the ladder truck's gonna need a hydrant, might have a small tank on it, but
Again, in the rural areas without the access to hydrants, we run water shuttles. So it would be the same as it is now with the 3 engines that we have. The fire department has. Again, if we need that increased water supply, they run water shuttles, and we would have the capacity to do that ourselves, but that's where mutual aid also benefits us greatly. So
anyway, we'll discuss it more in detail at some point.
mm-hmm.
yep, okay, I guess we're to the wellness center, sorry. Okay, so the police contract. The 2025 increase of 16% reflects a financial plan from earlier this year. Could be subject to change. The mayor and I think Paul too are meeting online with them the 24th or something of October, and they'll present their new thing. Basically, it goes up and goes back down because of equipment, and that stuff's always fluctuating. So we'll wait and see. I will say, and I think we talked about it, our costs aren't going to be as much this year. Maybe we should talk about that in closed session too.
Let's talk about that in closed as well as a contract.
Yeah. But there'll be savings this year and suspect it'll be going to next year. So we'll look at that prior to closing out the balance. I've made a couple of changes to the budget compared to past years. Bylaw enforcement and animal control always used to be in our administration section, but they're actually in protective services in the provincial budget. And as they're comparing services across municipalities, it becomes important to have similar reporting standards. So I've just moved it internally for this year, but I did notice I did an error. I picked it up in protective services with the police, then I created its own service for below. So there's a little bit of a savings there, I think $30,000 or so. And that'll be corrected by next budget. And so with that kind of moved out, the budget is basically a 1% increase, primarily from savings from consolidating the 2 contracts, the PPSA and MPSA. It's significant savings. Fleet repairs under the fire department, there's an $3,500 increase. There's some tires needed. It's for the service truck, which is the first to respond to motor vehicle accidents, which is only replaced occasionally. So we have to bump it up every few years. So that or one of the bigger trucks needs them. For repairs and maintenance in the budget, that actually is the building. And there's a $3,000 increase because they want a flammable liquid storage unit. If anyone, I guess I'd know the gist of it. If you want any questions on it, you'd have to ask Councillor Neal because I'm not exactly sure.
Would that be almost like a work safe requirement? I know it's not quite their domain, but like.
But is that something collected from an accident or something that they leave there for stuff that's using your services?
Okay, maybe.
I'm not even sure.
Yeah, I'm not 100% aware myself, but I do know, again, from my day job that most flammable liquids, chemicals do require special storage.
Yeah.
Usually under work safe.
Work safe. We had it at Kingsbury as well.
And that can be anything like just gasoline jugs and paint.
That's probably a non-negotiable, is my assumption.
It's certainly a best practice. So equipment maintenance, there's a $2,000 increase. We're finding the cost of certification is increasing. So a lot of the equipment, the pump tests have to be done every year. The ladders have to be tested, not just the ladder truck types of ladders, but even the traditional stacking ladders. And then what we're seeing too is there's equipment that was new, some of them 4 years ago, some of them 10 years ago, that is requiring some more upkeep. They're still in good shape, but just due to age and time, they've got to be looked. And maybe prior to the pandemic, we invested in both a compressor for their air tanks and those tanks that are all in a row. What are they called?
That would be,
Anyway,
it's basically storage for
the
the
air storage, so they
compressor.
can come in a major event, they can come here quickly, load up their breathing apparatus and get back to the fire. That we've invested heavily in that over a couple of year period. Now they've all gotten a little older, and so we're going to require a little bit love. And then the protective clothing, there was an increase. There's still continuing replacement of bunker gear plus helmets. The current year's budget is going to be used up in about a week. So just the cost of that stuff continuously climbs, new standards come up. And we won't talk about it tonight, but we're actually needing now to increase different SCBA gear because they now need a 45-minute limit, I think it is, where the current group only needs 30 minutes. They aren't making you replace them all at once, but we're going to have to, over the next several years, start replacing a couple of units at a time. Firefighting supplies, plan in place for the department to use some of their fundraised amounts. So as you know, they do the pancake breakfast is primarily their main fundraising. And recently, most of the supplies has been donated, as you know, from the Red Herring. He'll go and help people get all the things. And so it's allowed them to build up a small bank account. And the fire chief was going to talk to them about adding equipment. Most of it was for the new truck, just adding everything, ladders and I don't know, just a whole bunch of smaller stuff that's part of the response. There might be requests after in another month or so, if depending on that conversation, but it seems like it should be okay. The stipends, there was a request by the chief that they be increased by $2,000, and that's for the whole group. So that takes it up to 15,000, I believe, and that's split among all the responders at the end of the year. So I think it's a fair request. One thing that we haven't heard from too is the WorkSafe New Brunswick firefighter cost. That thing can take big jumps sometimes. I haven't heard anything this year yet, but we'll have to wait another month or so. The chief hasn't heard anything either, but they will release those rates sometime prior to the, well, after the election, I'm assuming. So that could change dramatically. I'm not expecting it to, but you don't know, because there was a request to cover more elements or more injury type things. I'm not saying injuries, it's things. Primarily, it's diseases that occur, it could be years and years after they've ended their volunteering services. So cancers, heart conditions, lung conditions, things like that. But as they do that, they have to have the ability to fund it as firefighters take ill. So that's what we have to keep an eye on. So an overall increase in the fire services of 5%. Environmental development, which is the solid waste removal. So right now in the budget, there's 10% increase, and this budget was prepared before the tenders came in. In the October regular meeting, we'll bring back the results of the tender.
Mr. Beer,
Sorry.
should this be, I know it's going to be a public budget, but should this conversation be done in closed session? Just because this information, if it was out in the public, would that not potentially show them what they have for wiggle room? Like, you know what I mean? You're almost
No. Well, the tender's already closed.
Okay, so they're locked and
they're
okay.
locked.
Okay,
yeah.
just making sure on that, just because you know where I'm getting at here.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I think there's going to be significant savings from what was presented in the budget. And so $50,000 plus.
And that's mainly because Shamcook Bayside were paying based on assessments of a bigger portion than what they should have for all these years, right?
Number one, but number two, because recycling
Recycling
they're still being paid for recycling, but from somebody else. So their service to the towns has dropped by 25%. So
And with all due respect to people that have negotiated 3, there's actually negotiations happening now, unlike before. It seemed like we just signed whatever was put before us in the past as a greater region, I guess we'll say. So, oh, that's good news. That makes a lot of sense.
now, offset that a little bit though, there's a loss of volume for out of region customers that the landfill used to service for municipalities that weren't within the Region 10. And with that, and that actually happened 2 years ago. And so they have to increase their tipping fees, I think by 25% in order to make that balance. Each service, from what I understand, each service within the Regional Service Commission is treated like our utility. Each individual service has to stand on its own feet. So that's to be, and that wasn't included in this budget. And like I said, still talking, but I think the tipping fees are probably locked in from my understanding. But
They're not officially because the budget hasn't been approved,
Yeah.
but it's kind of like
of all the things there, that's the least one that can have room for movement, I would say.
the only option that the Regional Service Commission would have would be to increase revenue or cut costs, and we're gonna have that presentation so we can discuss that further before that's voted on. But I wouldn't say it's locked in right now, but we've seen this coming since that their largest customer in the United States stopped shipping to Canada. This was 2 years ago, but we had the previous year surplus is kind of how it worked.
You've already set up that meeting too, right? Okay. All right, Public Works. Is the air conditioning still on? So we've dropped the fleet fuel by $5,000. This is reflection of history, both in warmer winters and lower prices. Now, in the event of a normal winter, we would need to dip into the reserves, but I think it's worth doing that at this point. The reserves have built up, and even in a heavy winter, we're only talking $20,000 or $25,000 extra in fuel. Which sounds like a lot, but we had 1 year where they ran 40 days without a break because of all the snow. Equipment rental increase of $6,000. So we're talking about the lifts and the things that we're looking to use it for. Well, should be grad banners, not lanners, veteran banners, lighting for Christmases, indulge. And then if we're renting them for kind of one of those doing the poles in the downtown scenarios, we'll also use it to do some building maintenance when needed. So for instance, working on the eaves here or on the courthouse or anything that isn't accessible by a normal ladder. Hydrants, there's an increase of $3,000. They put on those markers like you. Oh, was there a question? Sorry.
Sorry, before you go on to hydrants there, at an earlier meeting this year, it was flagged that if there was going to be any more sidewalk plowing, that we would have needed a new sidewalk plow. So I was expecting that we might have a sidewalk plow in our budget this year, because we were hoping perhaps, some people were hoping perhaps to plow one section of the trail down by the new bathrooms. Maybe not for the whole winter if it was a bad winter, but certainly for part of it, maybe to Christmas and skip a couple months and pick it up. But so I was expecting that we were going to have a new plow in there. Thank you, Roger.
That'll have to be a discussion by council. If you want to go that route, we'll have to rework the numbers a little bit. For the hydrants, we put hydrant markers on them. They're basically for the winter time. So both the plow operators, more importantly, the fire department can find them when there's big snow drifts in them. They're just a yellow or an orange stick that sticks up from the valve of them. Culverts and ditches, a $4,500 increase. We need to install a few larger culverts around town, but the prices of those have outpaced inflation, like a lot of in the cement ones, especially. This is what we tend to be using. Now, asphalt, we have held the price, but so currently a third of our current budget goes to shipping. So once upon a time, one of the companies had a mobile plant. They called it an Oak Bay. We used to be able to drive down there with our trucks, come back and do it, but they shut that down, I think primarily because when the highway was completed, and now we have to send someone to St. John. Our trucks are too small to handle it and aren't heated. And so within the current budget, we aren't going to talk about it tonight, but you've probably seen this tandem dump truck that's included there. This would allow us to send our own driver up to get the stuff and come do the things. If you reject the tandem dump truck for a smaller vehicle, and you still want to keep a decent level of asphalt replacement, and this is just talking potholes and cracks and sunken areas, this isn't like major sections, this is what we're doing internally, then we'll have to up that budget to account for all of that. Well, should, I guess don't have to, but you know, to maintain a level of service on the street that's respectable. And I'm saying another $10,000 would make up for the extra shipping. Yeah.
Excuse me, have you and Public Works considered one of the trailers? I don't know if you've seen now, but the province has invested in quite a few of the asphalt trailers, where it's like a kind of like a dump trailer, but you know, they're very portable, especially not being a prime mover. You can certainly tow it with one of the existing trucks you already have. It keeps the asphalt warmer longer. That's already built into it. I know they're not cheap, but it's awful nice to have something that's designed to do what you want it to do, especially where it will keep the asphalt warm for extended periods of time for going around filling in all the potholes. And the nice thing is there's no insurance required for it either, right? So, you know, you buy the trailer and it's easily towed to one of our trucks that we already have.
Yep. So we do have something like that, not for asphalt, but if you last year approved the dump trailer that you see around for the leaves that they're using. We need to replace a truck anyway. We can look at that, but the cost of that plus a new truck could be the same as just getting a tandem truck, but I'll have them look at it. I wasn't aware that they had something specifically for asphalt removal, so thank you for that, and we'll have a look to see what it is. For sidewalk repairs, we'd like a $7,500 increase due to deteriorating curbs, and then we have to lower some curbs for new sidewalks. We're talking about putting one out here for the youth center / arena, and then also potentially for in front of Compass Housing. But one of the things, basically to keep them accessible, you can't have that 3 or 4 inch drop. You've got to lower them like you see all over town. We've been practicing for years and years.
So sorry on that. You're talking in front of the arena. What would be the plan there?
Stay tuned.
Okay.
I think it's just across from
talked about that for a couple
Terry, can you hear me? Can you turn your mic on?
Because we've talked about that one for a couple of years. It feels like we really do need to get something done. That is because the youth center, but also now we have the senior activity, the senior wellness center information. Like that is, to me, that's the #1 spot that in town that needs something there for sure.
Terry, go ahead.
Yeah, we have that in the capital, Chris. Listed for right across, so it'll be just before Alexandra Crescent. That intersection there will cross over, and the crosswalk will actually end at the council chamber steps, which will keep the pedestrians behind, away from the back of the cars that's in the parking lot.
Gotcha. That's great.
Thanks, Terry.
That has to be done. Like.
Okay, street signs, we're asking for a $2,000 increase. There's a combination of price increases, but we're seeing a little more vandalism again of signs being stolen and things. We had a big rush this year, mostly stop signs, I think. And then just from everything from the one way to other stuff, we're just requiring more and more signs. No parking. You think once we get in the motor vehicle bylaw, there may be a requirement. We're seeing a whole bunch of people that are camping overnight on our streets and things, and they have to be posted. And we'll discuss that again if that's the type of things we want to do. Lane and street markings, 7% increase to reflect costs and potentially more crosswalks. We talked earlier, but that does not include we talked about whether or not to paint lines in the downtown, and we discourage from doing it. We think it'll be less efficient than actually just letting people go as it is. In Christmas decorations, there is a request for a $3,000 increase because we're starting to acquire more commercial type decorations, and we love our Home Depots and Walmarts and Home Hardware, but sometimes you only get half a winner out of them because of the residential grade. Just it is what it is, and some of them have commercial grade we can buy from them too.
Question on that one. So we pay the power bill obviously for those. I'm wondering if that $3,000 couldn't be taken out of the tourism accommodation levy because Christmas by the Sea is growing, and that is product development really and part of the brand. It's just, you know, locals do enjoy it, but it also is a tourism initiative. And if we're paying the power, then a few dollars every year should be going to continue because that is probably the month in St. Andrews that is growing the most for increasing tourism right now. So it makes sense to continue to fund that. And I know we keep taking out of this, we won't be able to do capital tourism projects, other capital projects, but that one to me, just because there's a lot of increases to public works is something we can easily move out because tourists do benefit from that.
We certainly can. It's council's funding to use the word loosely, play with. Sorry, council. I had a thought I had to make a note on. Wood and chipper removal, we're asking for a $2,000 increase. And so, as you know, we started this program this year. In the end, efficiently, it worked out pretty good. There's 2 people. If we end up with the tandem truck, it'll make it more efficient. But what we've run into is that where we go unload it, the landowner has put in a tipping fee, a reasonable tipping fee, but a tipping fee for leaving the loads, which should be expected, but for years that he didn't. And so that's why the increase, especially bringing it to public works yards. Most of the contractors don't even want to touch it anymore because the stuff gets all intertwined. It's just a nightmare to grab with equipment. And so it's easier for us to load it up and go and dump it than it is to have people come in and store it than for anyone to come in and try to remove it. And usually before they were a week to 10 days on cleaning up the public works yard. That's a private contractor with 2 dump trucks.
So just to slow that one down a little bit, because we didn't do the post analysis, we think that putting employees' salary and stuff into this program, the way that we did it for this pilot project was more efficient than allowing them just to dump. That is the conclusion.
We'll have to work it out, but from a human resource side, of course not, because from a financial side, yes.
Okay.
Now, the only thing that we're going to be running into potentially, when one way to save money is, even with the LEAF program, this potential, the potential dump site we're going at now could be cut off or the fees could go up. What we could discuss is the old dump site for the town on the Fry Road is still gated, still wide open. There's still some areas there that are sunken. We could actually probably take a lot of that product out there in the future. We don't have that need to have this conversation today, but just to put it on your radar, the staff have gone out and just eyeballed it from the road, and it hasn't been touched for 40 years.
And just so what I'm hearing is the financial standpoint looks like the pilot worked, but with the things that have to happen in this town and the amount of employees we have for public works, does that make sense though as well? Just as opposed, because we never did do the post analysis on that one. It's just with all of the responsibilities they do, and they do a wonderful job keeping this town pristine. It's incredible what they do, but like you said about the sidewalks, right? That's more winter, but the capacity of our staff, does it still work out? Like, because it's pretty labor intense.
It's labor intense, but at the flip side, between some cost savings or better service, because there's a lot of people that don't have dump trucks half tons and stuff to move these things. So for a lot of people, it was a lot more convenient to bring it roadside. The other thing is you're risking people, because you have to leave the gates of public works open all summer long, right? And so you're risking people going and stealing something, which is becoming a more common event. And then they're always a little nervous having the public drive around the public works yard if they're going out in trucks and stuff, that something will be missed. So it's you're comparing 2 or 3 different things from just brief discussions, and we can do a larger debrief, but they still seem to prefer it.
And council, just so you're aware as well, some of the other issues we had when Public Works was open was like dumping of white goods, which is a service that the RSC does and comes and picks up. So there were other things that were being dropped off with brush pickup or drop off there that was dealt with in whether it's hazardous material or other. So this has actually eliminated issues within that as well.
sorry, Terry, I guess I know you're there. We can do a larger debrief, but did you have anything to add from Paul and I?
No, just what Paul just said. I was just gonna add that there's a lot of garbage was being left behind over the last so many years that the crew would have to clean up. So by having the public not able to go in there to dump off brush and everything else they had in their truck is working out pretty good so far.
No further questions.
Nope.
Councillor Harlan.
Just as a larger debrief that we would do around this, I would like some discussion around the wards, Bayside and Shamcook. I don't know if town has heard of people frustrated that they have no ability to access. I know that lots of us have large lands and we might burn or dump as on our own land, but not everybody does, or not everybody has the capacity to. So the challenge is that this is just for St. Andrews, the old St. Andrews.
That's correct, because of the separation of the tax bills.
Right.
But I think I said in another slide, but if you want increased services out there, willing to pay it, we can look at that, but we'll have to be, might need additional staff too. But and I know you're already paying 41.5 cents for no service, so it may not be a good idea. It'd be nice if, but I think there's room to do that, but there has to be discussion what the expectation is and things.
Yep. I think there has to be a larger discussion. Yep.
I might add to that, we're all faced with it, and whether it's garbage and, I go on a garbage detail every week on my property, but it just seems as though there's a problem down at the dumping down there, people dumping garbage down in public works. Well, rather than do something about the people, just change the method. It's like dealing with a bunch of 5-year-olds, There's no punishment for breaking the law effectively. And it's happening in town, it's happening out in the wards also. And we just try to find a way to work around it and let them keep doing it. And just goes against my principles in some way, in that we try to find a way to work around these people that don't want to play by the rules.
At the risk of repeating something the mayor said earlier, under public works salaries and wages with the $90,000 increase, banners, Christmas, setup of bleachers, a lot of those things could be argued to possibly be, the monies could be coming out of the TALB fund. So again, more potential pressure and arguments for directing some of that TALB money to public works salaries. Thank you.
Okay, and actually you beat me to that, but part of that increase is that we do want to add an extra man to public works because of a lot of this stuff. But we had 2 full-time people in Parks and Recreation, 2 seasonal people in Parks and Recreation. We'd like to remove one of them out, not hire someone directly out of there, but eliminate one of those positions, a half a FTE, and convert it to a full-time FTE and transfer it to Public Works, which would help offset some of these things. The Public Works Superintendent and the Public Works Supervisor and I sat down this afternoon and look at all the different things they do that are kind of out of the realm of Public Works, and I meant to gather it together but didn't quite get it, but it's on my desk, so I'll go through it tomorrow morning and email it out just so you have an idea of kind of the things that are in addition to usual first things for Public Works. And so it's fairly significant. And these event setups can be fair, to us we might think 5 or 10 minutes, even some of the stuff they were telling me, I was like, oh my Lord, you guys take that long to do this and that. And so it's just to have an appreciation, and to the point where it may come to the point where we have to say, okay, if you don't approve the position in Public Works, it's fine, but we'll have to put more responsibility back in some of these organizers. We'll say, here's our benches and banners and whatever else you need from us, but you guys have to set them up, for instance.
If I could please, since amalgamation, there's been quite a few people hired into this town, and with additional staff coming on this year already, that hasn't happened yet. Like, is there at a point where we think that we're growing too fast? And I get it that there's lots of needs and everybody wants stuff, and everybody wants a tent set up, everybody wants bleachers, everybody wants you know, whatever for Katie's Cove or whatever the event is, and they're all good events and everything else. But at what point does this town stop growing and just learn to deal with what we have to do with the people that we have? Like, it's with the tax rates going up immensely over the past couple of years, and likely to go up again this year from what we're seeing. At what point do we say enough is enough?
And that's a question council has to answer, not staff. We keep being asked to provide more service levels, higher service levels for these events and things. And in order for us to continue these services that are requested, this is kind of what we need. If the answer is we got to stop, that's fine, but we'll have to stop supplying some of these services. We can even break down which ones we need or which ones are going to take a lower priority, kind of, if we have time, type of thing.
Both points are correct.
Yeah.
Right. To your point, we didn't even have anyone that was in recreation a year ago or a couple of years ago. Now it looks like Public Works is doing even more around events, so we do need the extra position. And when you jump ahead here to talk about actual parks and recreation, there's an increase there as well. So the question is when you look at the total package, and Mervin's doing a wonderful job, but when you keep adding these costs to it, is maybe doing half the events what we need to do as a community? Or I don't doubt it that it's a lot of evenings, a lot of weekends doing a lot of this activity. But at what point are we going to say that, to your point, enough's enough? But in the same sense, we can't have it both ways. We want all this stuff to happen. You need to have the support. So we're going to have to discuss this one further, to your point, because it's not just Public Works. There's also going to be a recreation one, which he's going to talk about as well. So that's not the only reason for Public Works, I'm assuming, but it is a part of the reason, right? It's not, you can't, the whole position, another Public Works position, is not because of events. Is that safe to say?
No, it's events have taken away from the ability to do other things.
Okay, so it is events.
It'd be
Okay.
primarily, it'll surprise you once we were doing the math today, when you look at the total man hours dedicated to different things, it's like, holy crap. Because it's not one or two guys, it's like 4 and 5 guys to set up for different things. And there's several of these major events.
Absolutely.
And we're excluding Canada Day out of this calculation, by the way, because we've done it for so long, it's part of the normal routine.
Councillor Heenan.
Yes, your worship and council. As a council, when we did position forward for the recreation manager's position that Merv has, I would think that as a council, we would have been schooled enough to know that there would be additional costs coming with that position. We're not just going to hire somebody and let them sit in an office. There's going to be residual effect. There's going to be domino effect. If you want to have a better Canada Day, you got to pay for it. And if we don't follow up after us hiring the position, then it's a moot point. Like, we hired it. We knew this was going to happen. I mean, I knew it would happen. If you hire somebody to do something and plan events, someone's got to set them up. I believe. I mean, I was down and helped Merv one night move the picnic tables only because the staff were out on some other thing, but I mean, it's a big job. You can't dictate that we're going to do this and not pay for it. So if we've hired the position, then we have to realize the implication after the equal sign requires additional funds to set it up. Simple. Thank you.
Also noteworthy that out of that increase, 5,000 is actually just allocation from the arena, right? So, which we'll see on the, when we get ahead here as a reduction as well. But, yeah, we're gonna have Councillor Bennett's point though. We're really gonna have to, we can't keep adding on without expecting more support needed. We can't have it both ways. So it's one or the other, right?
Yeah, I read an excellent article in the last week on affordability in Canada and why we're having such a problem. And the economist that wrote it concluded that in the last 50 years ago, we were a society that needed certain things. Now we're a society that wants certain things. And the difference between needing and wanting is, it's tremendous. It can just become exponentially larger and larger. So it's a question of how do we control the wants, keep them down a little closer to the needs, and therefore control the spending. And like I say, he put a lot of thought in it. So I'm regurgitating what I thought was an excellent article.
Thank you, Councillor Harlan.
But I think the other part to this discussion is, what have we benefited as a municipality in terms of the growth that we have watched, or that has happened within our town? So we've increased events. You know, I look at what has happened in New Brunswick Day now. It has taken on a life of its own, and the number of people that come into this town is significant. So what kind of economic benefit do we generate for our businesses as a result? So I understand the point around needing to look at the overall picture, but I also think we have to have a balanced approach around this, because I think we as a community are growing, and if we're growing, then our costs are going to grow as well. So
I think it's worth adding at this point that, 10 years ago, the community wasn't necessarily growing, and we did a whole bunch of things to try to grow, and some of those haven't really come to fruition yet. I mean, we're on the cusp, but still, even though we're the fastest growing municipality in New Brunswick and our school numbers are still way down. And the number of families, it's still very difficult to have a family in town. So hopefully all these economic stimulus and events and all these things will keep St. Andrews a town and not just a place. Keep it a community of families where you can live versus just a place to retire. So hopefully some of the things that we've done will pan out and reach some kind of equilibrium soon. Thank you.
All right, we'll keep moving, but obviously there's got to be further discussion on that one, is what I'm hearing across the table. We don't need consensus tonight. We're going to roll it up, and then we're going to have the tough conversations.
It's still rough.
That's exactly it. We
significant.
We want to see the roll up, right? And then at that point, we get the number, and then we start working backwards.
So there is an overall increase in public work of 12%. And as we talked about earlier, is there an interest in Bayside and Shamrock having more access to public works? It would need to be reflected in the tax rate. But for instance, instead of Councillor Weir and his friends going out with chainsaws trying to clear back intersections, they'd have access to a team. But I agree with you, for 41.5 cents, they should have access to a team right now. But culture and heritage services, I'm not going to go through those one by one. Pretty much held at a 3% increase across the board for them. One thing of note is the courthouse grant from the province is going to run out next year. So that's going to be a loss of $30,000 in revenue moving forward. And there's more needs we're finding every time we look at the courthouse. We try not to look at it too often or visit it very often, because every time you see something, you think, uh-oh. But we did bump it up by a few dollars, I think $500 if I'm remembering, to make needs. The property taxes are lower if you look on your comparisons. It's just we overestimated 2 years ago, and I'm bringing it down to reflect what it is this year. Was I saying went down? Well, the repairs, yeah, went up by $500 to try to just address some things that are going. Bayside Hall, held at 3%, but it's getting very, oops, sorry. No, next, no, yeah, of course.
I gotta tell you, I met Terry over there one day and we were overlooking at the siding. And at some point we'd suggested that Public Works could go with a little dab of paint and fix it up. Well, not really when you can put a pin through the siding. Like, I mean, it's in rough shape. Like, I mean, it's amazing. Anybody wants to go have a look, I can show you. And Terry is still online, I assume?
Yeah.
So Terry can attest to the fact that we had a quick look and it's not good. Like, I mean, it needs more than a can of paint is all I can say. Because, I mean, the pillars are coming apart, the walls, like everything. It's bad. Anyway, I just wanted to give you that report because I went to the courthouse and had a look with Terry. Thank you.
Yeah, so just the path on the courthouse is Civic Trust is going to be meeting with us very shortly. What's it?
Well, actually, we had a date, but the first question we'd have, would you rather meet with them in person or is virtually okay?
In person might be better, I think.
Okay, and I think we're October 17th. We're tentatively, we'll have to talk to them is when we just get a whole bunch of meetings between then and now, plus the UMNBs next week.
And then council after that presentation, then I really think as much as it's hard to make a decision, we have to make a decision. Like this status quo can't keep going on forever. And there's a few things that are options that are in my mind, but in respect for Civic Trust, they are one of the options. So we need to hear what they have to say, and then we dive into that further and talk about one of the variables is Councillor Heenan going to be is what is the real state of this courthouse, right? So, as we knew from the lead paint, it wasn't as pristine as we were led to believe when we acquired it. So we will have that conversation, council. I don't see a way in which this coming year that you don't make that decision. It has to be made. And I know it's not easy. And I know no matter which one you pick, there's going to be a percentage of the population that tell you got it wrong, but we have to make that decision. That's fundamentally why we're in these seats. Thank you.
Your worship, can we take a 2-minute break so I can get a glass of water?
No.
Okay.
Payback. Payback. Why don't we just do a motion to recess for just 2 minutes in case anyone wants to go to the washroom? Councillor Heenan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akaji. All in favor of just a 2-minute recess? Any opposed? Seeing none, we're in recess.
Councillors, if you don't have your, please shut your mics off. Then recess.
All right, do I need a motion to come out of recess? I would look a motion to come out of recess. Councillor Heenan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Akji, all in favor of coming out of recess. Please signify by saying aye. Any opposed? We are out of recess. Please continue, Mr. Spear.
Thank you. So Bayside Hall, as we were talking, Your Worship, held at 3%, but we are recommending some continued capital investments in there and windows and things just to bring it up. There are a lot more activities going on with a good volunteer base and Mervyn helping them out. And there's also some like semi-full-time tenants and dancing online or line dancing, not online dancing, line dancing coming in and maybe a gymnastics. Yeah. I think so too. We were just signing up some of that stuff in the last few days. So that's good. What we've practiced in the past is if a facility increases their revenue, we'll sometimes let them spend it too on improvements and things, but I'm thinking that the revenue will far outpace what they need to spend. And we talked about the future draft, looking at the rental commitments and increase the revenue accordingly. The Parks and Recreation facilities, we just increased most of those line items by 3%, except we had to add 3 accounts for the new washrooms at the point for power, janitorial, and repairs. We like to keep track of all those separately just to see how things are going, or if something goes awry, we can see it right away. I did notice, I talked about earlier in Public Works dropping a half a position, and I didn't actually do it on the budget, so it's the formula got messed up, so I'll do that in the next draft. Recreation events and programming. So after year 1 of the summer camps, staff believe the weekly fee can be increased as well as the number of entrants. So the summer camp revenue is actually up 67%, and it still remains very competitive. And
just on that, council, so you would have seen in your reports that basically only 20 spots were not filled within the whole weeks, and we saw actually more youth be signed up after the first couple of weeks to where people saw the success of the program. And so we anticipate that that'll actually continue going forward, and actually we're anticipating hopefully full camps all next year for every week.
Canada Day, an increase of $5,000 if so desired. We actually haven't given the fire department an increase for the fireworks displays for years, and we went from the largest display in Charlotte County to the second largest, I guess, because of St. George. But from what I hear they spend, I don't think we're ever going to play catch up. Yeah. Recreation software, so that's ActiveNet. It's been a great investment. It's online bookings and things. We spent $12,000 on, I think, last year, but there's an installment fee that was part of that, so it's dropped this year to just the licensing fee. So that'll be a savings. We do have to confirm that, so that may change on the next version. But I had Mervyn call them just to confirm. I looked at the contract and it wasn't as clear as I thought, but I just want to confirm. Wages and benefits, there is an $18,000 increase. Last year in the rec manager's salary was the only thing in that, but now we've added 2 seasonal staff kids for 9 or 10 weeks in the summer to go along with the day camps. Although one way to look at it still though is that the revenue generated by the day camps still pays for those staff members. So it really one offsets the other as long as they're continuing their enrollment and the extra costs and stuff. I think Terry and I were looking at the budgets earlier. I might have missed a couple of things on the, we had increased expenses. I think it was for Centennial Park. The washrooms need to be repaired, a little more higher expenses there. And the tennis courts, we have to increase the cost there a little bit, but we're only talking $2,000 or $3,000 in total. The W.C. O'Neill Arena. So the speed skaters, a few months ago, because of volunteerism and funding, the return of the club is uncertain. So I dropped all the revenue out, but in discussions with Mervyn this afternoon, he actually thinks they are going to come for some of the day. They're going to present next week on getting some funding from council, but they've committed to 3 hours a week for now. to see where funding goes. So there'll be some revenue increase in the speed skater section. The miscellaneous ice rental, I've increased that by 5,000. It's just a reflection of what was done last year, that we outpaced ourselves, and Mervyn City's getting more calls from neighboring communities that where they don't have enough ice time, right up to St. John included. So they're coming down here to rent our ice. Pre-pandemic, that was very common. Our almost number one line item for revenue was miscellaneous site rentals for people outside of our town. The dormitory rental is a reflection of the new lease signed. Part of it was for the mattresses we purchased, but that's there. And so there's an anticipated 3% increase in revenue.
Crush. Oh, sorry. There's more. Yeah, let's continue. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just do it at the end.
Sure.
It's revenue though.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. I'll look, Councillor Neal, for some insight from you. But what I was wondering is, if you look at the Garcelon Center right now, they're almost completely fully booked. And the reason is because everybody's back on the ice. And we don't have ice in. Now, I know every day that we have the arena running its plants, it's not a profitable venture per se, because we're just paying our costs. But what I was wondering is, and I know Indulge uses the curling club, but I don't know if that's a big enough reason not to do this analysis. Would it not make more sense, and Councillor Neal, please weigh in, to put the ice in earlier and take it out earlier? Because at the end of the season, a lot of teams are eliminated for the year and they're not using their ice. They've been knocked out of minor hockey. The men's leagues kind of start shutting it down. Would we not have more rentals earlier in the season waiting for the ice to go in than we would later in the season? Because it sure seems that way to me when I look at the bookings at the end of the year.
I would probably agree with you. Again, early on, teams are looking to get on the ice. The other point I would make towards that is that we would still have considerably cheaper ice rental costs than, say, the city. And teams there know this, which is why we saw, I think COVID, I think, kind of started it, but I think there's a lot of teams from the city that would still come down here and rent ice. Tournaments for sure. We've seen that with some local groups. And also I'd say there is more and more of an uptake of local kids that are now playing on teams, say in St. John, which also tend to then sort of migrate down here for, I don't know, could be practice, could be games, whatnot. So I think there are opportunities there to increase that revenue. But I would agree that possibly getting started earlier.
Because minor hockey's already been going for 2 weeks. I couldn't believe how early it is now. It's been going for 2 weeks now. And I just know at the end of the year, they have their day of champions or whatever it is, most of those, and they shut down the men's leagues. They're done, which is a big, what's that?
Usually goes out.
That's just not appropriate. That's a conflict of interest.
No, true.
So when do we put the ice in?
Day after Thanksgiving.
Now,
Well, rephrase that. It's open the day after Thanksgiving. They'll start another October 2nd installing the ice. So, Your Worship, I don't disagree with you, but there's a couple of problems we're going to run into. Number one is you're still going to be running the ice plant in March because of the
Alpine.
Oh, the Alpine. So you're not going to say that's your number one cost in running this place during the winter. The other issue that's going to be a struggle is we send most of our public works crew to install the ice. So if we do it earlier, it means during when you've got the Dragon Boat Festival and all the stuff that happened this weekend, etc., and the grass is still growing, you're going to have to bring them off of that. I'm not saying it's impossible, and I can talk to staff about it tomorrow, but I just know it's a timing type of thing. We took our arena staff started this week getting prepped for the ice install and getting some of the routine stuff done before the cleanings before the season starts. We'll look at it.
okay. Yeah, just analysis, because I know like even Black's Harbor's ice goes in, they get double the rentals because the half that's supposed to come here doesn't come here. So I just worry about the end of the year versus the beginning, what the revenue. But to your point, if there's all these other logistics, which makes sense, the Heather Curling Club, that's been that for forever, that weekend, kind of around Easter, pretty much. It may not make sense. And I don't think, even if the arena's fully booked and the plant's going, I don't think we're making money, are we? So Okay, so unless we're cutting something off the back, we would lose more money by going earlier. Okay.
Again, just a service level question, and we can do the analysis, but off the top of our heads, that's kind of the thing we've seen.
Thanks.
The only other thing is if we can find an earlier customer base. We've talked, I think, bringing like a junior B team in one year, I think maybe in the last 10 that will do their main practices here in September or something, or the Sea Dogs, which every arena in the area is fighting for. But do you know what I mean? If you can find a base,
it'd be
a base camp.
It'd be really good to have Charlottetown or Moncton here next year just because of the connection to the community, but it's just our ice again. It's too late for their preseason. They're not coming here for the regular season, right? They may do a practice, but I will say that to do a preseason game, you do have to pay them. But I can tell you that it was profitable, the game that was brought to St. Stephen.
But with your connections with the Boston Bruins, you can have them bring the preseason here.
Well, they kind of given up that I'm not going to be playing for them, that I chose being a mayor of the town of St. Andrews instead. So let's keep moving.
So on slide 25, the Zamboni maintenance has needed to go up. It's just an older machine. It's actually due for replacement the next couple of years, maybe next year. Yeah, but otherwise, it's about a $2,000 increase. We had to replace the radiator last year. Yeah.
I did read that the Zamboni is giving us issues. I'm just asking because I'm not sure. The Dunn Foundation, is that something that they would consider as a project? Because I really feel it's part of the arena, and it's a great asset to the arena. And I would say that it would be a nice thing to put a proposal through to get a new Zamboni, because I think it reflects the arena.
They would consider, they do typically over the history of my time on council, prefer projects at this building because it was, even though the name's not on the side of it, it was made possible by the Dunn.
I just wanted to bring it up. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it was, yeah.
I also noticed, I think wages went down here. I don't know if that's actually right. We didn't decrease staffing levels or anything, so it might be a formal issue. So I have to revisit this.
Was it 5,000? It's a transfer to Public Works because to better allocate their time is why it was down.
Yep.
You didn't make a mistake.
Well, I didn't want the town to fall apart if they thought I made a mistake. Revenue, Wharf, showing an overall decrease of 9% to reflect the last couple of years. That can go up. The berthage fees have gone down. I think it's a combination of, there was really bad weather in July. We've lost some customers in the agriculture or aquaculture business. And then touring boats seems to be down, although we had a big regatta that was supposed to be here. It had to pull back in August, I think, late August. Some of them became that rate. And so that's part of it. And so the commercial revenue is down about 8%. I will note that it's one of the few departments that, excluding the debt that costs to maintain it, that actually shows a surplus. You add in debt payments into that, no. But and then right now for the wharf, the expenses are just 3% inflationary increases.
I assume that the council, after the wharf refurbishment is done, is going to have to do a deeper analysis on the debt and what the revenue is. That'll be a special project on a year where council will really have to dive into that one. Councillor Heenan.
Your worship, we should still be able to be in council to do that, right? Where we were under that guidance.
Should be our fifth and final year.
Yeah,
yes.
because it would be beneficial for this council to do it, as we were the ones that got the work done, and I'd hate to pass that on to some other council. Thank you, your worship.
Then the last department is the youth center, which for now we've only maintained 3% inflationary cost increases across the board. So we're going to skip over the next pages in your budgets that you're given was capital, but we'll wait for those for the next time we get together, because it's going to be a long discussion on its own. So for the water and sewer utility, remember that it's self-financed internally. The current bylaws does allow us to increase the rate annually. I couldn't remember if it's 2 or 3%, but it's built right into it. That we could do that without a council approval. But once we go through the metered billing in the next couple of cycles, we'll need to ensure capital or replacement costs that are needed are in line with utility fees. So, you know, we kind of slowed down for the last couple of years for various reasons, including COVID, but also the cost of debt. But there's some significant capital infrastructure needs in the utility. And also eventually the water tower over the next 5 years. I think it's in your 5-year capital plan to have that replaced. So for revenue, there's a 3% inflationary increase. For the vehicle fuel expense, the past history has shown an $800 increase. Part of it was, as you know, the truck was vandalized a couple of years ago out at the plant. And so we've moved into the public works yard so it can be locked and looked after better, which means the individual has to drive in here, get the truck and head back out there. So it's just adding mileage. And then we're just asking them, in light of some of the issues we've had in losing this train, if they make more frequent trips through the day, just to make sure all the equipment's running appropriately, to keep an eye on things. Vehicle repairs and maintenance, I think it's a 2019. So there's some stuff that needs to be done. There's about a $500 increase in the vehicle repairs and maintenance, including tires. Now, wages primarily is because it was under operating last year, but one of the employees received their level 2 certification, which is required as a part of our operating permits for the province. And so we raised him to reflect that additional certification. But we also, for the first time, added in overtime. There has been significant overtime over the last couple of years for after-hour call-ins and things. And so we've had to add that, which shows the increase. Yeah.
Would some of this wages be included in installing the meters that we've had troubles with? Like, I mean, there's been a few instances in town where they've had to tear up because the pipes were bad or the meter were bad or something.
Well,
so would that increase the salary?
Well, a little bit. So everything from the meter replacement, because there's some people who work all day that he'd had to go in after hours to do the meter replacement. But for instance, we had that big job on Prince of Wales near the Algonquin in the spring. And, you know, that they were required to be that. We're just seeing a bit more of that. It's never in the day when we get water leaks. It's always Friday afternoon at about 4 o'clock when someone says, oh, by the way, there's a big river running down such and such street. What do you think? I think I shouldn't have answered the phone. That's what I think. But that's the testing. And so we're just following up with what the normal route has been over the last few years of the experience. The water main repairs and maintenance is basically the cost of valves and piping and things. We're asking for a $3,600 increase. The cost of those materials has just gone up significantly. It's been reflected in our tenders that have come out too. And we're just seeing that structures or manholes and things, that stuff's gone up. Water testing is a $2,000 increase. We send up a big thermos, I think it's every week, to a lab in Fredericton. And they used to send it back, but now they're charging us to send it back. So that just reflects that cost. It's not government, it's private. So they had been carrying it, and their cost of the test haven't gone up very much over the last few years. So, and blue-green algae testing has a $12,000 decrease. Originally, it's not because we're testing less. It's just originally we had to fly the stuff out into Winnipeg, and it was like extremely expensive to get the testing done. Now there's a more local lab. And so it can just be done by ground transportation. And so that's just a reflection of how much it's costing now. It's almost next to nothing compared to when we were first dealing with it. Our sewer main cleaning, we're asking for an increase of $6,000. So it's really for 2 reasons. Terry would like to restart a program where he actually videotapes a lot of the in-ground sanitary mains and storm sewer mains, that they run cameras between, like, the manholes. and can see what condition the pipes are. It helps determine if it needs to be replaced, if it may have to be dug up, if there's rooting and stuff. Because he's saying equipment with the cameras actually have little saws on them that if the root bulbs aren't too big, they can cut through them and then free up and prevent any future blockages. And actually, funny story, I heard there was a raccoon in our sewer system the other week. Stormwater, somebody looked in a crate and they saw a raccoon, but they can get its way out because it's some of our town, the in-ground pipes come into ditches and go out. So he would have just followed that and, follow his own way out. So you never know what you're going to see as a municipal employee. So anyway, he wants to be able to do stuff like that. It's really proactive work. It also helps to figure out what sections of the pipes need to be replaced over the next few years. Chemical supplies, there's been a significant increase in those in running the water system. And so we're asking for, well, not asking, we need a $12,000 increase for the cost of the stuff. And we're going to go over budget this year, probably by 4,000 or 5,000. And we know another increase is coming. So it's in order to maintain that. I did note that in the water budget, there was an error that the sewer debenture is only 56,000. I think it was, it should be 93,500. That I made a mistake when I was transferring that over and splitting it. So there's an extra $40,000 in cost that has to be accounted for there. So, Your Worship, that's really all my presentation on the operations. If there's anything else.
Council, I know it's high level. I know we need information from the province to help us understand what this really means. But I guess, Mr. Spear, I know don't have the capital before. We're not going to get into capital tonight, or but
Well,
kind of how do you picture this going? Because there's some things that council heard tonight, and I know there wasn't a lot of like, hey, let's get consensus on this, but it's kind of take us through it like we always do. But how do you picture this kind of moving ahead?
well, I think we'll go through the capital, and it's only like 10 after 8, Your Worship. I'm just as happy to go home, but if you want to start it till 8:30 just to start your work through it, I'm okay with that. I don't have any slides to go with it because I thought we just stopped cold. But if you want to keep going, I'm okay with that. For future, I think we have to have a more and finish this section. Then really, until we get the provincial numbers, we shouldn't meet again, in my opinion, because a lot's going to be determined about exactly what the assessments and the unconditional grants are.
That's what I mean, like knowing what the growth is versus like that'll determine, right? What, and then at that point, it also determines what the mill rate is, right? So,
when does this have to be finished by? When does this have
Well,
to be
that's a good
submitted?
question. By regulation, November 15th. But if they're not releasing their information to the end of October, good luck from everybody. That's when they say, but they don't chase us. Really, theoretically, by New Year's, we get it in December.
we don't want to do this over the holidays, though. But again, control. It's hard. It's hard without having the full information to really know. But there is probably some things here. We went through it again that we could get some consensus. But let's digest it for tonight. Council, I wouldn't mind going another 30 minutes. Simply the fact that we could avoid that Saturday or whatever it was at all costs. I'd love to do that. But over to you. I have a tendency of sitting too long sometimes and overanalyzing things. So, council, what's your consensus? Would you like to get into capital? Just show of hands. That's not a lot. How many would like to adjourn? I'm seeing enough that want to adjourn, actually. So, we will adjourn. I'll give you time to do some nice, pretty slides for us. Yeah, thanks, council, for being here. In fairness, there was already a meeting this week. So, Councillor Ware.
Yes, I'd just like to thank Mr. Spear for his method of presenting it this year. And I realize there's a lot of guesstimates and estimates and numbers pulled out of the air, but at least it's in a format that I could very easily get down through it, pick out the questions I had, and as I get happy with numbers, I'll tick them off, and then they're out of my mind. And I think there's a lot of effort gone into this.
I agree. Different people have different budget experience as part of their professional careers, and this was one that everyone can understand and highlighted the significant changes versus a year ago, right? So, yeah, a lot of them have to be discussed a little bit further. Some of them don't, some of them are no option. The reality is we all know that the capital projects are gonna be the one that we really have to go through. If you just get into the buildings and structures alone, it's a huge number, right? So we're gonna have to have some tough conversations, and I know staff's doing it in the background already. All right, based on that,
Your worship, there
Yep.
was something we talked about going to closed session for. It's not urgent, to be honest. If you want to postpone it, it's perfectly fine, just to throw it out there.
I think just to wrap up the ones that we've covered, to say that we've gone through it, we should, just to wrap up this section. I hate to say it, but it's related to this. Let's go to close. We'll try to make it quick as possible. So before we do that,
Your worship, the deputy mayor.
We have mayor for a day on Friday.
we do. Let's just jump. We'll go to council and deputy mayor's comments. Let's do that
Okay.
then, if that makes sense. Has there been any questions though? Nothing has come through. Now we can go ahead. Okay.
Anybody else?
Go ahead.
Okay, last year we had mayor for a day, but the mayor in his infinite wisdom chose 2 mayors. We only made 1 bling for the mayor last year, so we couldn't pass it out. This was made by my craft group, a couple of them, Val Corbett and Aline Saulnier. And so I've kept it for a year, but this year, because I thought the mayor in his infinite wisdom would choose 2, so we made a second one. So now there's 2.
You're gonna kick me because I didn't. I only picked one.
I know, and this year he only picked 1. But anyway, we have an extra one for next year. So those are the bling that they will be wearing, like the mayor wears. So made by a craft group. So thank you very much.
That's very nice of you to do that. So yes, we have a mayor of the day on Friday and a fire chief. Have you sent the schedule to everyone, Paul?
I have not, but I'll send it out to everyone.
So-
But if council is available or any council members for 11 o'clock for a mock council meeting
Friday.
on Friday here.
Oh, here.
Just for council's information, the winners don't know they're the winners. Their parents do, so they got permission. But meeting them at 9 a.m. at the school, taking them to the fire hall. They're going to get a tour of that, and then they're going to be on CHCO TV to do an episode of Your Town Matters. Then we have our mock council session. After that, I think we go to lunch, don't we? And then they go back to the school, and with some of the decisions they make, there's probably going to be a nice snack for the school, and yeah, a few motions. So if anyone is available, I know it's hard during the workday, but it is what time at 11, is it?
11 a.m. here at the council chambers.
11 a.m. here. It would be good if we had enough to have a mini quorum for them, but don't feel obligated. Whoever's here is here.
So through you, your worship, there will be an all-year student event after.
No, you do not have the day off, sir. All right. Anyone else for comments? Mr. Spear?
Just quickly to remind council that on Saturday morning, some of you invited, there's a community meeting about the garbage situation in Bayside. That was by invitation only, though, to certain residents that have been directly affected. And just to remind you, the trail committee or the trail fest is happening this weekend. Where everyone's going. It was supposed to be 2 weeks ago, I think. And at 2 o'clock at where? Langmaid Park for the grand opening?
No. So grand opening is 1 o'clock, ribbon cutting at the Harry Mallory Sports Field. 2 o'clock at Langmaid Park is where you're going to hear some trail information, history, and start trail walks from there till 4 or 5 o'clock. And then 6, then come to Market Square for a concert with a band called Full Circle.
Can you email us that time schedule, please?
I will email council the time schedule.
All right. Thank you, everybody. So I'll be looking at 8:14 p.m. for a motion to go into closed session. Got Councillor Neal and seconded by Councillor Bennett. Yeah, I know, but Keenan's got a few today. I'm going to give this one to Bennett.
Council,
all in favor, go
hold
ahead.
on, just so you know, it has to go under 68(1)(c), information that can cause financial loss or gain
Thank you.
to a person or a local government or could jeopardize negotiations leading to an agreement.
Thank you for that, Mr. Knopper. All in favor of what Mr. Knopper said? Any opposed? Seeing none, we are in closed session. We'll give a moment for technology to shut down. At 8:40 PM, I'll be looking for a motion to come out of closed session. I've got Councillor Michelle, second by Councillor Heenan. All in favor of coming out of closed session, please signify by saying aye. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. I've got Councillor Neal and Deputy Mayor Akaji, all in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. That is adjourned. Thank you very much for being here.